Kids, you're not seeing too many injuries. It's the middle school and the high school age where you're starting to get this, 12, 13, 14, 16-year-old range where their bones are still growing, they're still growing, but they're getting more serious about their sports where they sort of play harder, they play more aggressive, they play multiple sports at the same time, where they play a high school or middle school basketball, and they also do travel soccer or something like that in the wintertime to keep their skill set up. So now they're compounding how much wear and tear they have. So then you're talking about probably the big three you worry about: the overuse injuries, or repetitive stress and trauma injuries. Obviously head injuries and concussions have been big the last 4 or 5 years. We've been dealing with them with my whole career, but they've been popularized the last 5 or 10 years. And then obviously they talk about the ACL and traumatic knee injuries you get. A lot of these, female soccer players, basketball players, UConn obviously has had a couple of those every now and then, and with the recent RG3 and stuff with the Redskins, that made it pretty popular. So
now there is injury prevention programs, to save money. If you can dwell upon that for a bit, what is that all about?
Well, I'll tell you, that's one of the things that we try to do with what I do in my business, is really work on trying to keep the kids out of the athletic training room and out of the doctor's office as much as we can. We want to keep them on the field. We want to keep them playing sports. That's where they're happy. That's where they want to be. They want to be playing sports. So there are definitely things we can do with proper warm-up, strength training, both off-season and in-season, to help them overcome those injuries, especially with ACL injuries. It's huge. If they can just work on balance, a little bit of strength, and work their core strength, they can really help lower a lot of these injuries. What is,
obviously money can be saved by having these programs from the high schools that you're aware of.
Yep.
Do they have these programs in effect?
Well, I think every school and coaches are working really hard at trying to get injury prevention programs in. Dynamic warm-up and the proper getting the kids ready to go before the game has been very popularized the last 5 or 6 years. And so I think some schools do better than others. Obviously some schools utilize us to help provide those services. Some have it in-house. But again, I think that's the key. We've found with our sports, and there's some literature out there supported as well, that if the kids train properly 2 or more times a week for an hour or so, doing specific exercises to prevent injury, in this case we'll talk about the ACL injury of the knee, if they do that for 6 weeks, a couple days a week, about an hour at a time, specific drills, they can reduce their rate of injury by 50%. So you're talking about getting rid of ankle sprains and little hamstring pulls and little muscle aches and sprains by working their body to properly condition themselves before they get into their sport or their activity.
Now, what about ACL, the knee injury? I know that's a big topic.
Huge, yeah. Want to know what the ACL injury is, or?
Both.
Okay. Well, I mean, the ACL, how you get an ACL injury is usually with either a non-contact or a contact injury. So example, some people will just be running down the field and they'll twist or cut the wrong way, and their knee will give out and they'll tear their ACL. And the ACL is designed to stabilize their knee so they don't pull their knee too far forward or rotate too much. So if your knee gets pulled forward or rotated, if you plant and cut the wrong way, you can tear your ACL. Sometimes it happens with a direct blow where someone actually hits them directly in the knee, forcing their knee to shift, and that'll tear their ACL. When the ACL is torn, especially if they play any kind of a running or twisting kind of sport like a soccer or a basketball where they plant and cut quite a bit, they're going to have that reconstructed. Doctors go in there and they take grafts from either your hamstring or your patellar tendon, and they replace that torn ligament with a new one. Tends rehab for 6 to 8 months, and hopefully they can get back onto the field after 6 to 8 months, maybe up to a year, and get back and play their sport again.
And this could be somebody who's maybe even 6 or 8 years old, or is it more for the upper age groups?
Yeah, it's more the upper ages. You're going to see it in the, I would probably say, and there's no definite, but 13 and up is probably the category.
Middle school, high school?
Yeah, middle school, not so much, but more high school, college level athletes. You can see it in younger kids, but more the bigger kids, because again, more power, more speed, more cutting, more torque, more contact in those sports.
What about concussions? I know that's a big a big topic.
Well, you can see concussions at any age, and it doesn't have to be from playing sports. You can get a concussion from a car accident. You can get a concussion from banging your head and, on the shelf above the toilet in the bathroom. So you can get a concussion pretty much anywhere. It doesn't even have to be a direct blow to the head. In the NFL, they're talking about a lot of the trying to knock down on the head-to-head contacts in the NFL. But you can just get it from a good body blow. You can just get hit and fall down or jump and fall and get a concussion.
Now, let's say somebody has a concussion, a child has a concussion. What are the visual signs that a parent should be aware of to know that one's child has had, or a concussion? Okay. What needs to be done?
Great question. And this is a resource for the parents out there. There are a lot of great websites out there on concussions. Here in Connecticut, the Brain Injury Alliance, it's BIACT.org, has a lot of great information about brain injury. And that's what a concussion is. It's a traumatic brain injury. Signs and symptoms. Signs are things you're going to see. So if your son has a concussion, you'll see that he's maybe wobbly and unsteady on his feet. You'll see that he vomits or throws up. You'll see that maybe his pupils don't react quite right. You might see that he has memory loss. You might see that he's not remembering his words or he's slurring his words, things like that. Things the athletes will feel are called symptoms. They'll feel a headache. They'll feel unbalanced. They'll feel nauseous. They might have light and noise sensitivity, so that loud noises and bright lights really give them a bad, wincing kind of a feeling. They'll feel those kind of things. They might get numbness, tingling in their hands, things like that.
So basically then a parent who, sees this or whatever, obviously should bring the child to a doctor ASAP.
Yeah, any coach or a parent that thinks a kid takes a hard blow, they should remove them from the game of practice right away.
And this can happen in any sport.
It can happen in any sport.
It can happen in ping pong.
It could happen, I haven't seen it yet, but it can happen in ping pong, absolutely. Just it takes a violent blow to the body or to the head. But yeah, if they see those symptoms, they want to, the old rule is when in doubt, sit them out. So if you're not sure, pull them out of the game of competition, ask them some very simple questions. Do you have a headache? How do you feel? Do you feel sick to your stomach? Do you feel nauseous? Do lights bother you? Do noise bother you? Do you feel foggy or slowed? Another good symptom, they'll feel foggy or slowed. And most athletes, I know you're a good athlete, most athletes, you know when your body's not right. And if your body's not right as an athlete, you need to get out of the game and figure out why you're not right. Tell somebody that you're not right. The biggest thing is these kids don't tell anybody that they don't feel well. They get hit 2 or 3 times, and you get worsening of the symptoms. You get secondary impact syndrome, you get post-concussive syndrome, things like that. So if you don't feel well as an athlete, you got to get out of the game. And coaches, if your athlete's not acting right, not feeling right, pull them out of the game, ask them a few questions, figure out what's going on, and when in doubt, you just got to sit them out.
What do you mean by overuse injuries?
Overuse injuries? You're changing topics on me. Overuse injuries. Overuse injuries happen from repetitive stress. Like you play tennis every day, or 3 hours a day, and then you go home and you garden, on top of that. Those are kind of overuse. So when an athlete, a lot of times they're practicing 2 or 3 hours a day, plus they go then at night and lift weights and do more training. So it's the using the joint over and over again without any rest. They go right from baseball into basketball, into soccer, into wrestling. They just keep going and going and going without really having any kind of a rest period, and they get these overuse injuries.
Let's look at a commonsensical approach. Let's say, again, as a parent. The parent is the primary educator, what have you. What should a parent do when it comes to a child who wants to engage, let's say, in a given sport? What kind of prevention should be pursued? I mean, physiologically, obviously you have a doctor's appointment, an annual physical, what have you. But are there other things that can be done as well?
Absolutely. I think a couple keys are, one, making sure the athlete is strong enough to handle the activity they're trying to do. So the off-season training, conditioning, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, lunges, simple, easy, even just body weight type exercises. Doesn't have to be heavy weights, just body weight exercises, squats, lunges, calf raises, sit-ups, push-ups, easy stuff they can do on a daily basis to maintain their strength in the off season. Hydration, staying hydrated with water. Supposed to drink half your body weight in ounces of water per day, making sure you're really hydrated, making sure the kids get enough sleep. Our high school athletes don't get enough sleep, and they're too busy with classes all day, sports in the afternoon, homework all night, socialization, as big as a teenager. They just don't get enough sleep. So rest is really important to helping that body recover and avoid injury. Nutrition, Keith mentioned it a couple weeks ago, nutrition is huge in these kids eating. A lot of them get up at 5 a.m., they don't eat breakfast, they eat lunch at 10:30 in the morning, play all afternoon, and eat everything that's not nailed down for dinner at night. And so really making sure they have well-balanced meals. They have the supplements that they need them to help make sure they're getting enough protein, enough energy, enough carbohydrates to keep themselves healthy and fit. But I think hydration, sleep, nutrition, and then just watching it how much the kid plays the sport, making sure that they're physically ready for their activity and they just don't overdo it.
To our viewers, 792-4101, and this is, of course, a live call-in on this Tuesday, March 12th. Again, 792-4101. We're talking about sports in general, and if you have a question about what's going on in sports in your school, if you'd like to know, give us a call, and we'll attempt to answer it. Let's get back to concussions, because that is a critical issue these days, and also in professional sports, but obviously it can happen anywhere, to anyone.
Sure.
With kids, they could be playing a simple kickball game.
Oh, yeah.
And bump into one another and bang heads, what have you. So the thing is, if it's not dealt with right away, I think what we want to do is bring out the severity, the potential severity of the whole thing. What can happen down the pike?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we talk about when in doubt, sit them out. And if you give a kid that has a concussion or has symptoms of a concussion, they have the headache, the dizziness, the blurred vision, the nausea, the fogginess, the slowed feeling, the amnesia. Obviously, you want to get them to a healthcare professional that can evaluate that. So whether it's a school nurse, an athletic trainer at your sporting event, or your home team physician or sports physician, you want to get them to the person that can appropriately diagnose the concussion and make sure they don't have anything else serious going on. Because again, it is a traumatic brain injury and it should be dealt with accordingly with the proper healthcare professional. So I can't really stress that enough. The next thing is making sure you get proper treatment. And really, rest is the proper treatment. Once we've diagnosed it as a concussion, maybe they've had x-rays or a CAT scan to rule out a fracture of the skull, things of that nature, and they really believe it's just a concussion. The brain just needs time to heal and to rest. So they're going to tell you no sports, no gym, easy on the homework, maybe even get a couple days off from school, depending on how bad your symptoms might be. Because if you go back and you don't tell them that you're injured, and we don't recognize you have the concussion, you don't go see a qualified healthcare professional like a certified athletic trainer or school nurse or physician, then your brain is already kind of injured. And you go out there, you play more, it could take less of a hit, less of a blow to make that injury much, much worse. You talk about much, much worse, you're talking about forgetting who you are, how to walk and talk and chew gum, not being able to do school and science and math homeworks, read music, read books, things like that. So again, it's a traumatic brain injury. And so if you keep injuring that brain over and over and over again, after a while, you're going to start losing some functions. And I've seen kids that have concussions, they last a day or two, and they're back in a week. And I've seen them last, months to years.
Now, what about prevention then? What would be, is it possible to prevent a concussion from happening?
Well, I think it is possible to lessen the incidence of concussions. And I think it's possible to lessen the severity of the concussion. And I think that's really the key. How do we decrease the severity of the concussions? We can't prevent all injuries in sports. I wish we could. I'd make a lot of money if I could. Kids are going to break bones. They're going to sprain their fingers. They're going to get concussions. What we want to do is make sure that when they get injured, they see a qualified medical professional. They get the right assessment, they get the right diagnosis, and the right treatment. In this case, the treatment for concussions is rest. They need to stop activities, stay home, rest, relax, make sure that they don't have symptoms. The sooner those symptoms go away, the sooner they can start the recovery and rehab process and get back to school and get back to sports. So